Listen to the Vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. Very happy to welcome Amy Suto here. Now, she is an author and a digital nomad. So we're going to have a great conversation, learn a little bit more about her. So let's kick this off right. Amy, tell us a little bit more about you.
Thanks. Well, I'm currently in Krakow, Poland. I am a digital nomad, so I travel full time. I'm heading to the Edinburgh Play Festival next week. I was recently in Istanbul for a month. And so life as a digital nomad has been pretty exciting. And it's actually the topic of the new book that I actually wrote that came out today, The Nomad Detective, Volume 1. And prior to being a fiction author and putting out my book and being a digital nomad, I actually started in Hollywood as a TV writer. And when I was working my way up the ranks, I finally got my own episode and I got to work in a writer's room. I realized that it wasn't everything that I wanted. And when the pandemic hit, I decided to take a sharp right turn and leave Los Angeles and become a freelance writer. And I ended up falling into a path of ghostwriting memoirs for people all over the world. And through that, I got to work with a lot of really fascinating NBA players and Silicon Valley CEOs and like Olympians and really fascinating people that took me on my journeys around the world as a freelance writer. And so I've just been kind of traveling the world, writing books for myself, writing books for my clients, and I have been just really lucky to be doing this.
Wow. And you have a blog on Substack?
Yes, so I run a Substack on writing tips and tips for writers on how to become more kind of like financially free as writers and how to grow their own Substacks as well. I think Substack is a really cool platform for writers. There's a lot of really interesting tools for monetization in terms of creating a paid newsletter and a paid community for your subscribers. And it's kind of bridging this gap from the death of a lot of the traditional media and a lot of blogs that were really popular to instead readers can then support individual writers one-on-one through subscribing to their Substack publications and being more in their orbit. And I think that that's kind of a really fascinating business model that a lot of writers and creators are really jumping on, and something that I make a lot of content on, helping writers get into Substack to share their travel stories, to share the things that they're working on, to share advice and educate others as well.
What does it take to get monetized on there?
It's pretty easy. For Substack, the platform itself is free and Substack takes a percentage of your earnings and you can monetize from day one. I remember just over a year ago, I started my publication, and within a few days after I started it, I got my first paid subscriber. And it wasn't somebody I knew, it wasn't friends or family, it was just some stranger on the internet who liked my writing and wanted to support. And I think that that's kind of the magic of these platforms, connecting readers with writers rather than having to, subscribe to a big publication that is like maybe paying your writers enough or all of that. Instead, it's kind of cutting out that middleman and allowing people to support the creators that they respect directly, and that's going for journalists and writers and creatives and artists. And I think it's kind of a more fascinating model that's emerged in the creator economy that I think is going to serve writers and creators really well over the next chunk of time.
I noticed you talked a little bit about AI in what I read on Podmatch. Do you kind of worry that AI might take the place of writers out there?
I don't worry about it because to quote Paul Graham, good writing is good thinking. And when it comes to what AI is doing, I think AI is really good for marketing tools, for distribution, for taking a piece of work and helping to get it out there. But when it comes to the creation of it, I think readers can really tell if a piece of work is just AI written, because the pieces that are written by AI are a mimicry of real thought and like interesting pieces. And AI can't go out and be an investigative journalist and create a piece. AI can't tell stories that are meaningful to it and have a through line. And I think that that's the piece that is really kind of being missed when people are looking at AI and writers, and especially for writers in the longer form spaces, because AI can barely kind of like keep coherence after like a page or two. And even if you spend a lot of time trying to train a model and trying to get everything to be, the outputs to be just right, if the model changes, then you lose everything. And it's also very costly to kind of operate bigger scales with AI. And I think that like AI has its place with the monotonous things that nobody needs to do. But I think when it comes to true writing that entertains or educates, you're going to not get you're not going to get information that's worthwhile through AI. And the tools can help, but they're definitely not going to replace writers in the ways that writers are needed in society.
Are they using that when it comes to entertainment?
Yes. Yeah,
I I kind of
entertainment.
wondered.
Oh, you know. And I think that like this is so difficult because it's like I think that that AI is going to be something that we're going to have in different aspects of the process. But when it comes to like the idea creation, having humans involved in that is really important. I think that AI can help with certain elements of, when the process of creating an animated movie or TV show is very laborious. There's so many pieces that AI could kind of help with, like fill in the gaps to help those things get made more quickly with fewer man hours. And so I think that there's places that AI can definitely help and should be used. But then there's certain parts that you can just tell it's like, oh, this feels like it was written by AI. Some blockbusters nowadays are just like, was that written by AI? And so there's certain elements where I think that AI can help in the process, and some elements that it should be left to the creative professionals that thrive.
Yeah, I always wanted to get into comic books, so I thought, you know what? I've got a few ideas. I'm gonna plug something into this chat GPT or whatever they call it. And it was almost like you were explaining something to a 5-year-old reading the writing, and it was so generic and bland. It's like, how does anybody use this? But I get
Yeah.
what you're saying. Now,
Yeah.
from what I understand, what you do as a digital nomad and being freelance, you use that as a premise for your book series, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I've been traveling for the last 4 years, and as a digital nomad, I would just have moments along the journey where I was like, this feels like it could be in a story. And I think a few of those moments include when I did the 4-day Inca Trail to Machu Picchu last year. I was in the middle of
Mm.
Peru with like my group of friends and our tour guide, and he would just point at like a stack of boulders that looked huge, and he'd be like, you see those stones over there? Like, there's no way humans could ever move those. And, the people back then didn't have the technology. So it was probably aliens. And so it was really funny to be in this really ancient place filled with mystery and to be kind of like wandering around this like just gorgeous location in Peru. And I was like, this would be a perfect backdrop for a murder mystery. And when I was in Argentina in January, I kind of woke up in the middle of the night after having long conversations with friends about all the true crime that was happening in the digital nomad community. And I was like, there should be a detective that comes and solves crimes and figures out what's going wrong, and it helps to find missing people. And so I kind of drew from the underground of the digital nomad community and the things that do go wrong, like people going to a party in the Paris catacombs and getting lost, people going to a yoga retreat and ends up being a cult, and like all of these kind of like pieces that we hear about through the grapevine as full-time travelers, where we're all outside of our home country, we're all kind of in the world living this life that doesn't feel quite real. And a lot of people like don't realize the things that can get kind of slip through the cracks and the things that can happen in the shadows. And so I really wanted to kind of focus on that through a mystery series, and my first book follows the first 4 cases of the series. And so it's a collection of serialized short stories following Detective Violet Chase as she starts the search for her missing sister while solving crimes around the world.
Wow. Yeah. As soon as you said that place, I'm like, yeah, ancient aliens. That's like on our
Yeah.
bucket list of places you have to visit, right?
Yeah.
So do you imagine yourself as that character when you're writing?
I think it's a little bit different. I think it's more of I remember the feeling of being in that place, and I remember what it was like to be on that trail or to feel lost in Paris. And from there, it's really easy to picture these characters and kind of watch them inhabit this space. And so when I'm writing, I'm kind of seeing the characters move through the scene, and I'm just trying to capture that. And I think that the best writing kind of comes from the unconscious, so it's being pulled from like your experiences, and hopefully the reader can find their way into the main character's shoes, and hopefully they can kind of get lost in the experience. But I almost see it kind of like maybe it's from my Hollywood TV writing days of like seeing a scene unfolding in front of me and just trying to capture it.
Your life sounds so exciting but do you ever think that one day you just want to settle down in one spot, maybe have a family or something?
Yeah, I think at some point, I think what I've always tried to do is if an adventure sounded great, I was like, yes, I'm gonna go for it. And since I just turned 30 this year, so I've kind of filled my 20s and the beginning of my 30s with lots of adventure. I'm sure at some point I'll be ready to slow down and stop traveling, but I have so many experiences already, and I have a bunch of trips coming up that I'm really excited for. And then every year I try to reevaluate, all right, is this the year that I stop traveling? And then all of a sudden a trip comes up and I'm like, maybe not. And one of these years, I'm sure that I'll decide to kind of take a beat and slow down. But at this point in time, I'm really enjoying the life of being a full-time traveler.
See, that's something that I wished I had done when I was younger. Now that I'm older and I'm grandpa, that kind of thing, my body's kind of breaking down and I can't really get around as much, but I try to travel as much as my body will allow me. But if I had been that age and done what you did, I I think that's the way you should start life off, and then settle down later on. Maybe maybe relationships might last a little longer if you got that adventurous part out in the beginning, right?
Yeah, I think that there's something to be said about really kind of collecting experiences and collecting inspiration. And there's so much to be learned from different parts of the world, especially if you're a digital nomad and being able to really meet people and take classes and take cooking classes and kind of experience the culture and to hang out with people who live in a place and really experience what it is like to be somewhere different and to take the lessons that you're learning in these different places and apply them to your own life. And I think that it's really fascinating to kind of have the opportunity to almost have like a grad school approach to travel, where I'm trying to learn as much as possible and trying to kind of soak up these different cultures and the different perspectives and try to take the best from each one. And so I see this travel almost as an extension of my education, both as a writer, trying to write about different places and different types of people, but also just as a human in the world.
And you educate other people in what you do. Do you just do that as a blog to, to a general audience, or do you have one-on-one time with people?
Yeah, so I put out a book called Six Figure Freelance Writer, a holistic guide on freedom and finding freedom in freelancing. And that was a book that I did last year. And so that kind of broke down how I built my career as a freelance writer and kind of shared all my secrets from that. And so I also do one-on-one coaching as part of that universe of teaching people how to become freelance writers. But in terms of the education that I put out, I try to put as much out for free as possible on my YouTube, on my Substack. I have a ton of free posts on my blog. I have a lot of posts there as well. So I love sharing what I've learned because so often I will run into a problem where I just realize, I wish somebody had told me about this. I wish I had been, taught how to avoid this obstacle or what I should do in this situation. And so often I want to try to be that person for others and trying to help and share the knowledge of the things that I'm learning. And so I think that like the best gift that we can give to others is to try to save them the heartache or the challenges that they might kind of encounter in their future. And so I just have a love of teaching as well as a love of learning from the people around me.
Well, let's say you had a teenager that gets a hold of you and they want to get started. Where do they actually get started? Should they go to school or, just get right into it, like doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because when I've had a lot of conversations with recent college grads, often it feels like they're not sure if their degree has actually given them a leg up. And I think that this is the tricky part of whether or not people should go to college. And I think that if you're going to college to do something very specific, like become a doctor, that makes sense. But if you're going to college to be a writer, or if you're wanting to do something a little bit more creative, you almost always get a more of a benefit of just being out in the world. And I went to film school and I studied screenwriting. And while I learned so many great lessons about storytelling and I used that part of my education, I also feel like that I've learned a lot more from being a freelancer and jumping in. And when I was a new freelancer, I learned so much on the job. And so I almost think that, especially in this day and age with college being so expensive, people can skip that step and just get straight into doing the writing. And having a portfolio will always trump being having a fancy degree, because the degree doesn't mean anything if you don't have the writing skills to back it up. And you can always be self-taught, and the internet just has so much information for free for people to learn how to do these things. And there's so many great books on writing and so many ways you can hone your craft without having to spend so much money to go and get a big degree for something that you can just do yourself. So I think most people are better off learning themselves and skipping the degree and spending that money on travel and the experiences that you'd have like in your lifetime if you're going out and seeking them, rather than being on a college campus for 4 years. I think having the world and treating the world like your campus, you'll get a lot more out of that.
I started out working in public works for the city that I live in. And what they do it is they put you with someone, they teach you everything out in the field that they possibly can. And then they send you to classes till eventually you get a license, because you have to have a license. But you can tell when somebody has just gone to school and try to tell you how to do your job, and you've actually been out there doing it, and they absolutely have no clue what's going on. I don't care about that paper on the wall. If you have no experience, it's pointless. So I get
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's something to be said for this just ability to jump right in. And I also think that the courage that you earn from jumping right in also is part of the fun, and like the thing that you get to walk away with saying, I didn't take the path that everybody else took. I just jumped in and I did the thing. And I think that it's really exciting to be able to see how, like, especially with the rise of technology and people being able to work remotely over Zoom, there's so many different ways to kind of collaborate with people, and the opportunities are becoming more global. And so if you're graduating into this type of world, there's so much more opportunity than even what I had. And I think that people don't realize, like, the connectivity that we have is also just such a gift, with so many opportunities to not only learn, but also to get hired to do really interesting things.
Have you thought about taking your experiences and maybe making another TV show or a movie or something?
I don't think so, because Hollywood is in a bit of a desperate spot right now, and I
I
think
agree.
that I think that, like, between COVID and the strikes and everything that's been going on in Hollywood, and I saw it a little bit when I was leaving too, about how the TV bubble had burst, streaming had kind of sucked all the money out of television, and there wasn't things being made the way that they were before. And so I think the tricky reckoning that is coming for Hollywood is this idea that people are spending less time watching one singular TV show or one movie in theaters. They're spending more time on their phones or reading Substack, or there's kind of this split of attention from, like, TikTok and Substack and Instagram that's taking away from movies and TV, that has only been exacerbated since everybody's been stuck inside in the pandemic, and then, decided to go out in the world and travel again, but didn't return to movie theaters like they did before. And so I think Hollywood is kind of in a tricky reckoning with that. And also they're trying to figure out how to use AI to kind of change how Hollywood is run. And so there's a lot of pieces that are going on there that I'm just not as much of a fan of. And while I think that there's still great people doing great work in that industry, I think that it's definitely going through a reckoning that I have no interest in being a part of right now. Maybe later, but not right now.
Hey, I don't blame you. They're taking IPs and ruining them. They're not sticking to the original storylines and changing things that make no sense whatsoever. I can't tell you the last time I've gone to a theater because just not interested. Everything just sucks. And when I do watch television, it's usually something that's a couple of decades old. I mean, I'm going through watching Monk again, or The
Yeah.
Office, and that I just don't care about stuff. And I do enjoy the independent creators. Now, maybe they don't have the big fancy budgets like TV and movies have, but the stories have a meaning to it. So I can look past some of the, the small production.
Yeah, Definitely. And I think that that's also the most exciting thing is that as there's more tools, more technology helping and aiding these independent creators and more platforms popping up, that's going to be kind of the renaissance and the most exciting thing that's going to be happening. And so we're kind of shifting towards a creator economy where individual creators build their own companies. And whether they host their business through Substack or through YouTube or through a combination of everything, creators are kind of creating their hub with their true fans and owning that fan base, and then being able to leverage that into different opportunities. And so that's the cool thing, and that's the thing that I ascribe to in terms of, being an author that is self-published and independent. It's like you kind of have to build your own fan base and build your own community because there is no big publishing institution that is propping you up. You have to do your own book marketing and put out your own newsletters. And I think that that's both the exciting thing and also the terrifying thing, because you have no safety net. Like it's kind of like it's all on you. And I think that that's what's going to really change the landscape of creators is instead of having, a publishing deal and an advance, or instead of having Hollywood handing somebody a check, like it's going to be all on creators to make it work. But that also levels the playing field, which I think is the most exciting.
I think most people are craving that you have something that they really want. Whereas TV and movies, it's like they're forcing stories that the fans don't like. So yeah, what you're doing, I think people really want.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of really cool opportunities for stories that haven't been told, and it was really heartbreaking working in Hollywood, seeing so many great scripts just wither on the vine because of bureaucracy, because of yet another Avengers movie that was being steamrolled everybody, and like 4 writers cycled through that script or whatever. And so to see the degradation of quality in movies and TV, it's very clear like the bureaucracy finally killed it, which is really sad because a lot of those great series like Star Wars have just like been completely ruined through these new adaptations. And so I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of room for new storytelling and a lot of new series to come out of the ashes of the previous version of Hollywood and the entertainment industry. And I think it's really cool to be part of that.
Some of the older fan fiction that came out with Star Wars, I loved those books, and I think they could have really made some great movies out of them if they'd have stuck to those storylines. But they're putting stuff out now that just makes no sense whatsoever. You change the Force to now it's the thread. I mean, come on. It just doesn't make any sense. There's no hero's journey anymore either. It's like they just handed it to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, when people want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so anybody can find all of my books and all of my links at my website, amysuto.com, and that's spelled Amy, AMYSUTO.com. And
what about your social media?
I'm on every social media platform with my handle pseudoscience, which is my last name, SUTO, and then science.
Hey, that's pretty creative.
Thank you.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'll put all the links in the description just to make it easier for people. Amy, thank you so much for being on the show. That your life seems very exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great talking with you, and I hope that Hollywood can get back in your good graces soon, or release better content elsewhere.
Fingers crossed, right? Well, and I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button from our regulars. You guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network